Hello everyone, my name is Thomas Wiebernight of Ahead CRM and it's earnings seasons again. Right now on April 22 of 2022, SAP has reported its quarterly earnings for the first quarter of its fiscal year, which I would like to go through for a brief period. So in general, one can say these have been quite decent numbers. So overall revenue up 12%, 7% at constant currencies as well. The euro got a bit weak. Where cloud revenue actually grew up at a very healthy 31 and 25% at constant currencies. Sorry. The majority of this revenue, of this growth, seems to be driven by S/4HANA Cloud, which has a staggering 70% of growth, which is quite amazing. So we are now at more than 19,300 customers of S/4HANA Cloud, which is a growth over the year of 3,500 over the quarter. Now, as we all know, there's this bad war going on in the Ukraine. And in spite of that, SAP expects the same figures as they announced in the beginning of the year for the remaining of the year, in spite of having an estimated hit of 300 million around that, which is actually quite optimistic from a business point of view. What I would like to point you to is a quote of Christian Klein that he made in the earnings statement. So what SAP customers are looking for when they are looking at SAP. So they are looking at making their businesses more sustainable. They are looking at improving their supply chain or helping SAP in improving their supply chain, and SAP making businesses more future-proof. Just keep these statements in mind. I'll come back to them a little later. Looking at the numbers, this is basically the tableau of the numbers, which I just have gone through, so I will not spend much time here and instead go on to the bigger picture. As we all know, SAP is one of the 4 big CX players, part of the Clash of Titans, as I call it, along with Microsoft, Oracle, and Salesforce. An interesting aspect here is that SAP sharply defines the CX business different from Salesforce does it, for example, or even Microsoft also, by making it more part of the overall value chain. Now, looking at Salesforce, their last earnings have been at 26%, 27% constant currencies, which means that SAP is right now, well, same ballpark. Microsoft was growing faster in their last quarter. So their Q3, they're accounting different than the other companies, will be reported early next week on April 26. So it will be really interesting to see whether this growth trajectory that Microsoft is on will remain. Comparing SAP with Salesforce on a bit more detail, we see that except of the home turf, EMEA, the growth rates compared to Salesforce's last reported numbers of SAP are now bigger than Salesforce, which is quite interesting. So this means that they are actually gaining traction against Salesforce, or on the other side, it might be that Salesforce's mojo is going slightly down. What does that all mean? So we are seeing that the cloud revenue is now growing as fast as the main competition, minus Microsoft. Perhaps we'll see next week. So this means that the overall strategy of looking at CX as a part of the overall value chain in general seems to pay off. On the other hand, one still often hears that SAP is not really recognized as a CX player, which means that the story still needs to be a little beefed up. What I think is particularly interesting is the cloud infrastructure strategy of SAP, which basically starts on top of the infrastructure as a service part, which means that they are still subsidizing their competition to quite an extent. So it will be interesting to see how these partnerships with especially Google and Microsoft evolve, because they are strong in enterprise software as well, especially Microsoft. Google, not yet, but they are pushing. So back to the Christian Klein statement and a subsequent statement that I took out of the earnings statement. So what has driven SAP's performance in the software segment, in the cloud software segment, was two things. First, S/4HANA Cloud, with a very strong double-digit growth, really strong with 70+%. That's just startup-like. And business technology platform. What, from a CX point of view, for me, confirming the statement above, is a little concerning, is that there is no notion of CX, which needs to be sort of intensified in order for SAP to stay close to the business and stay up to the mark, basically. Okay, this has been my brief analysis. I hope you found it interesting. If, or even if not, I'm happy for every feedback of yours, and see you next time.